Hey, in this video we're going to take a look at using Angler, and we're going to describe how you can use more than one factor. In the last email we sent out for Del Mar stats, we focused on the best single factor for each race and how you can find those in Angler. To get started here, let's just click on Tools and then Angler, and we'll open up that Angler database. And I want to explain the concept of using more than one. Now, if you're looking at a race and you have just exactly one factor, and let's say that's speed last race, you're going to find a horse in almost every single race, except if you're looking at 2-year-old races where they've not started before. So let's to illustrate this, we'll just say we'll look at today's date, and we'll say let's find all the horses that are ranked first in speed last race. And to do that, you click on the factors and then speed, and you go down to speed last race, and we'll set that to exactly 1. So then we'll hit the start search button, and what that does is it returns all of the horses today, because the date is set to today, that are ranked first in speed last race. And we can see that there's 122 of them, and that's probably going to give you some ties too along the way. So there's probably going to be a couple of horses in this group that are tied for first in speed last race, and you can check that by looking at this list down here. We'll sort that by race and then by track, and then as you come down you can see that right here, Belterra Park race 7, there's actually 3 horses that are tied for best speed last race, and so all 3 of those are returned. And down here in Canterbury race 3, there's 2. So you get with one factor you're going to probably get a few ties in the bunch. Now you can, as you add other factors, you can see how this result will shrink. So let's say speed last race is exactly first, and we'll say something like they had to have won their last race. And to do that, you'd go over here to the finish section, and you say last finish, which would of course be their last race. Finish must have been first. So now we have 2 conditions here. And before we had 122 results, but now we've added another, and we'll hit start search again. Now we're down to 39. So there's 39 horses that are running today that are ranked first in speed last race, and their last finish was exactly first. So the more conditions you add, the smaller your result set's going to be, because you're finding you're saying and it will return a fewer and fewer horses. So when we were looking at Del Mar, we were talking about the best single factor for each race type. And in a lot of cases that's okay, but there's always ways to improve it. So from that email, let's go ahead and clear this out right here. We talked about Saratoga, and we looked at some different, all the different race types at Saratoga. And we'll go ahead and look at this one here for allowance races. We want to find something that has a pretty big sample. So you have, over the last 3 years at Saratoga, there were 165 turf route allowance races. That's route being anything a mile or longer on the turf. And we identified that being ranked first in trainer current year and having had a race within the last 90 days was a pretty good thing. You would have made a profit of $115 if you would bet 2 to win on each horse that met those conditions. So let's look, how do you do that in Angler? Well, that's pretty easy to do. You come over here again to Angler, and the race conditions, we want to say over the last 3 years. So you're going to set the range. We're going to go back all the way to 2014, and we'll pick July 1st as the starting date, just because I know Saratoga starts sometime in July, and this will cover it all. And then it ends, we'll say July 1st of this year, because we know that it hasn't started yet. So we got a 3-year range here that will cover every race at Saratoga. And we're looking for turf allowance races, mile or greater. So we select Saratoga as the racetrack, and we have turf, so we select that in the surface, and the distance, we want that to be 8 furlongs or greater, and you do that with the slider here. You could say between 8 and 8.5 or 8 and 9, but we want it to be 8 or greater. And down here on the class, we're going to say allowance. So we could uncheck all of these other than allowance, or we could just click this button, uncheck it, and say allowance. So now we're looking at just allowance races on the turf greater than a mile, Saratoga, last 3 years. When I hit start search, we see that there were 165 winners, and there were 1,427 horses in those races. Now we want to limit that to horses that were ranked first in trainer current year. So we come over here to the factors section. We'll click on that, and we'll go to the trainer jockey section, and we say trainer current year, you have to be first. So we set that slider to 1. Then we're going to hit the start search button, and we're going to see these results change. So instead of 1,427 horses, now there's 203 horses that were ranked first, and 45 races were won by horses ranked first in trainer current year. And that alone was a profitable angle, meaning that if you had just bet 2 to win on each of those, you would have made $85.40. Now the way to improve that, what we looked at, we said, all right, well, let's say that they had to have run recently, so a race within the last 90 days. And to do that, you come down here to the horse and you say days since last race, and we'll set that to a maximum of 90. So this is saying between 0 and 90 days ago the horse ran. So anything that had run 91 days or greater is going to be excluded. So we come back over here and we look. Now we had, prior to that we had 203. We've added this new condition of days since last race. We hit start search. Now you have 39 winners, and your profit is now $115. So you can see here, the more factors you add, the fewer results you're going to get. But hopefully what you do here, as you're limiting the results you get, your profit is going up. You're betting fewer horses, but you're being more accurate with what you bet. Now you can keep adding conditions to this, and the danger is the more you add, the fewer you're going to get. You don't want an angle to be so specific that when you run it, you get nothing. So you know, and to illustrate how you keep adding factors here, the way you do that is you click Analyze Winners. So we know we have 39 horses that won here, and this, when I click this Analyze Winners button, it's going to go look at those 39 horses here, and it's going to tell us a lot more about those 39 and what they did. So you can see at the very top here, it's got this distance chart, and it tells you that of these 39 winners, you mouse over the 10 of them were at 8 furlongs, and 17 of them were 8.5 furlong races, and so on. So they were all greater than a mile, and 100% of them, of course, were on turf, because we limited this query to just turf races, and 100% of them were allowance races. And as you go down here, you'll see the factor ranks. So we know that 100% of these 39 winners were ranked first in trainer current year, because that's obviously what we set in the condition over here. And so you can go down here and you can start messing around and seeing if you can increase this profit. So let's see, the next highest thing that they all had in common was jockey current year. So 33% of these 39 winners were ranked first in jockey current year, and 30% were ranked second, 30.8%. So let's look at saying, well, if we added another factor here, jockey current year must be first or second. We'll see if that helps us or hurts us. And to do that, we'll close this down. We'll come back over to the factor section, and we'll say back to the trainer jockeys. Now we want to say jockey current year. Right now we're looking at anything. We don't care what the jockey was ranked, but we'll go ahead and say they have to be first or second. Now, is that going to help this ROI or hurt it? So right now we have a profit of 115. We'll hit the start search button, and you can see, look, that it went down significantly. Limiting your angle to or including this condition in your angle hurt your overall profitability. So you will take that back out, and you'll see it go back up. And that's kind of the process you'll go through here. And it's not always something like jockey. You know, you can hunt and peck around here on the keyboard, and you can experiment, and that's really the best way to learn how to use Angler, is to experiment with different conditions. And it's really simple to get an answer. So let's say you just guessing here, well, maybe they had to run first, second, or third in their last start. So we would go to last finish and say had to be 1, 2, or 3, and we'll start the search again. And look, the profit went down. It might have gone up a little bit on the place. So, and to get rid of that, you just click it over here, and it's gone. And we hit start search again, and we're back to 115. You know, almost an infinite number of things you can combine and check here. You could go back to the horse and you could say, you know what, I only want to do this for 3-year-olds. How does that work? So all those conditions that we had prior to this, plus now the horse has to be 3 years old. It goes down. Well, what if we say they can't be over 5? The horse age must be between 2 and 5. We don't want to bet on older horses. Does that help or hurt? Actually, it went up. So if you exclude older horses, 6 years and older, your return gets a little bit better, and you can keep refining from there. But you don't want to get too specific to where you're weeding everything out. So let's just, to illustrate that, we'll say, well, how does it work with horses between 6 and 13 years of age? And where we had 114 or 143 before, if we click this, now it's negative 28. So there are 14 horses that ran in turf route races, allowance turf route races at Saratoga over the last 3 years. The trainer current year for those horses was first. They'd run within the last 90 days, and they were between 6 and 13 years old. If you'd bet all 14 of those, you'd have lost every single race. So that would be a good addition to weed out those kinds of horses in your angle. So we'll come back over here and we'll say the horse age must be less than 6 years old. So our range is 2 to 5. So that's a pretty nice little angle there. It doesn't have a whole lot of conditions that are going to limit it. We found 160 plays over the last 3 years at Saratoga, a very healthy rate of return. So you'd go ahead and save that. You click the save angle button and you give it a name. We'll call it Saratoga Turf Route Allowance, and you save it. And now you have that angle in here, and when you run it, we'll click run, and of course it's going to return 0 for today because there's no horses running at Saratoga today. We'll go ahead and look at Friday and see if there's any that there is one that meets this condition on Friday. Saratoga race 7, Black Sea, meets all of these conditions and would probably be a pretty good bet. Now you certainly want to further look at these horses as they're identified, but this is how you use Angler. You can set the date. When you hit run angle, it's going to go back and show you exactly what matches for today, but up here in this date box you can change that to whatever you want. So we have data in here for Saratoga for tomorrow or for Friday, Saturday, but you can go back in time and you can just pick a random, let's say on July 2015 on a Saturday. Did it find any? Yep, it found one, and it did not hit the board, so your that angle would have lost $2 for you on that particular day. Now this horse, of course, was 30 to 1 morning line odds, so although he met all of these conditions here, there must have been some significant other issues with that horse that caused it to be 30 to 1 morning line. But that's the idea. You're going to create an angle. You can use more than one factor. You can use 2, 3, 4. You don't want to get a ton of them in there and limit your results, but you do want to make smart decisions here that make sense. So this is a pretty solid angle for betting turf allowance races at Saratoga, and that's the general idea. And as you get a little bit more comfortable with this, you will find some very profitable things. We're happy to help you with them. What we don't want to do is we have some users that are just fantastic with these angles, and they've come up with hundreds of them that are profitable, and they're doing extremely well with it. We don't share them. We would never share your angles with anybody else, so don't worry about that. We're not going to post them, but we are more than willing to help you with them if you have any questions. So best way again is just get in there and start playing with it. Use this as a guide and then start tweaking your conditions for each kind of race that you want to play. A good way to start with this, pick a track, just one single track. Maybe it's Saratoga or Del Mar, whatever you're most interested in playing, and just start working on angles for particular races at those tracks. And as you can see from our email, we broke those out into dirt sprint, dirt route, turf sprint, turf route, and then further by the race type. I don't think that in most cases it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to get exactly specific with the distance, because then you're limiting your result set. So if we were to say, exactly 6 furlongs, we'll find a lot of races. But if you're looking at 5.5 furlongs, you might get very few results. And so the more data you have to use an angler, the better and more accurate your results are going to be. So in other words, if you found if there had been 3 1.5 mile grade 1 races at Saratoga on the turf, and every single one of them was won by a horse that was ranked first in jockey current year, well, that's great. But since it's such a small set, you wouldn't have a whole lot of confidence in that going forward. But if there had been 50 races like that jockey current year won 40 of them, well, then that would be a lot more meaningful. So in a nutshell, get in here, start digging around. You'll be amazed at what you can find. And these angles are super simple to, once you have them created, click the run angles button, they'll pop up for you, and that'll give you a great head start on handicapping. And it also limits you. I know a lot of people, myself included, if you're at the track, you're sitting in front of a TVG, you kind of want to bet every race. But if you limit your plays to the ones that you know are pretty solid angles, you're going to do extremely well and much better in the long run. You have a good reason for betting that horse. Once it's identified as an angle, and then you can wait for that race, and then you can make some further judgments on whether or not to bet that horse. If it's going off at 3 to 5 or something, well, maybe you pass it. But if you're getting fair odds on a horse, and you've got a pretty strong angle around it, you'll find that you're making a lot more money just focusing on those types of races. Hope you have fun with this. If you have any questions, let me know. Talk to you later.